the report, Reconstructing Masculinities, Gender Dynamics After Conflict in Aceh, Maluku, and Bangsamoro Mindanao. You should all have a copy in front of you, and there are more copies there if you wish to bring some to your colleagues. The discussion today is really to try to understand how a better understanding of men and power structures can help women achieve greater influence after violent conflict. My name is Olivia Kmax. I'm the Director of Conciliation Resources EU. We act as the interface of Conciliation Resources, a peace-building organization towards the EU and its institutions. The event is co-organized by the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, Conciliation Resources, and the Integral Knowledge Asia. I would like to take the time to thank the speakers today. Thank you for all being here, and for all of you for coming here and sharing your experience and knowledge. I want to inform you that the first part of this event, when the speakers will have their interventions, will be recorded and will be put on the website of the Sasakawa Peace Foundation. Then we will stop the recording and we will hold a Q&A that will not be recorded and that will be held under the Chatham House rule. 24 years ago, the international community took a significant step forward with the adoption of UN Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security. It aimed to focus attention on the unique challenges faced by women during conflict and to underscore the imperative of their influence on sustainable peace, which is also highlighted in the EU's Gender Action Plan and the strategic approach to women, peace and security. However, despite some progress made, our efforts to strengthen gender equality and peace building continues to be thwarted by entrenched and unequal gender norms. This is visible with a strong pushback against gender norms in Europe and has bolstered war and armed rebellion, furthering the exclusion of women and other marginalized groups during and after conflict. Today, you will hear about the findings of a comprehensive study that examines 3 regions, Aceh and Maluku in Indonesia, and the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao in the southern Philippines. Our research looks at how ideas of masculinity, both prior, during, and after armed conflict, influence the power and the place of women in post-conflict societies. We wanted to do this in order to understand why the WPS agenda has not progressed further, and more importantly, to look for new entry points so we can work together to dismantle gender inequality and violence. We would like to thank our partners in this research, the Sasakawa Peace Foundation. This research has been led by Maho Nakayama, Director of the Sasakawa Peace Foundation's Peacebuilding Department, who is joining us online, and her colleague Yoko Tagazawa here today, in close collaboration with Integral Knowledge Asia, a feminist think tank in Indonesia. Together, they and our 5 other research partners in Aceh, Maluku, and Mindanao have been ideal collaborators to engage in critical reflection led by Global South feminist researchers and practitioners on how gender equality, peace, and security can be framed within local interests and perspectives. I will now hand over to Ambassador Yasushi Yamamoto, Deputy Chief of Mission at the Mission of Japan to the European Union. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, mostly ladies. Also, today's theme is that how to engage men. But anyway, I'd like to congratulate Sasakawa Peace Foundation together with its partners, Conciliation Resources EU and Integral Knowledge Asia, for organizing this conference on how to engage men in advancing the role of women in post-conflict contexts, and sincerely pay tribute to your ongoing efforts to promote the WPS agenda. As Olivia mentioned, the concept of the Women, Peace and Security, or WPS, was first stipulated in the UN Security Council Resolution 1325, adopted in the year 2000. It is based on the idea that the equal and full participation of women as decision makers and actors will lead to more sustainable peace. This idea applies not only in the context of the protection of women and girls in conflict, but also in all relevant stages from conflict prevention to peace process and post-conflict peace building. After Resolution 1325, 9 related resolutions were also adopted by the Security Council. The government of Japan is now stepping up efforts to promote the WPS agenda at the United Nations and in the field of international cooperation. We recognize the significance of WPS, which brings issues of women and girls that are traditionally discussed in the context of social and economic affairs to the international peace and security sphere. Our revised National Action Plan, published in April of 2023, covers all 10 Security Council resolutions on WPS. It refers not only to promoting the protection of women and girls in conflict areas, including against gender-based violence and participation of women in peace building, but also to increasing women's leadership roles in natural and man-made disaster prevention and mitigation efforts and decision-making. It further refers to promoting efforts to change the attitude and behavior of men and boys, and to promoting initiatives that contribute to the WPS agenda in Japan. In addition, this year, Japan will proactively promote WPS in the international community as the non-permanent Security Council member as well. The WPS agenda is what Foreign Minister Kamikawa has been working to promote since before she became minister in September last year. In October 2022, Minister Kamikawa launched the Parliamentary League on WPS and has been working together with today's host, the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, as one of the Parliamentary League's international coalition partners. As a result of these activities, WPS was included in our basic policies on economic and fiscal management and reform 2023, which is the basis of the Japanese budgetary processes for the first time. In addition, relevant domestic ministries such as the Ministry of Defense, the Ministry of Justice, and the Fire and Disaster Management Agency have begun working on identifying WPS focal points. Since assuming office as Minister for Foreign Affairs, Minister Kamikawa has vigorously promoted WPS as part of Japan's main foreign policy agenda, taken various opportunities to advocate the importance of WPS, including during her visit to New York, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and at G7 related meetings. In relation to Europe, Minister Kamikawa visited Kiev in January to hear firsthand the stories of women and children on the ground. And in the field of assistance to women and children in Ukraine, and renewed her determination to make concrete efforts on WPS. Following this visit, while in Finland and Sweden, the minister announced Japan's Nordic Diplomacy Initiative, which incorporates WPS as one of its pillars, and agreed to promote cooperation on this basis between the governments. In January, a task force on WPS was set up in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for cross-ministerial collaboration. At the Japan-Ukraine Conference for promotion of economic growth and reconstruction held in February, a session dedicated to WPS was organized. The new WPS Himawari Friends Network was launched as a platform for promoting WPS. Himawari means sunflower in Japanese. Japan will move forward with international WPS efforts in Ukraine's recovery and reconstruction. With regard to the conflict in the Middle East, where both Japan and Europe have been working tirelessly, the delivery of assistance to vulnerable people such as women, children, and the elderly is a top priority. Support with the perspectives of WPS is therefore essential. Japan will continue to promote WPS efforts under the leadership of the Minister Kamikawa in the future. Today's meeting is how to engage men in advancing the role of women in post-conflict contexts. And I understand that a report will be launched on the result of joint research on this topic. Men's engagement is essential for the promotion of WPS and the empowerment of women. For example, in 2014, the United Nations launched the He4C movement, which aims to engage all people, including men, to become agents of change to realize gender equality. Prime Minister Kishida, as a He4C champion, is also actively involved in the promoting gender equality. Japan's WPS action plan also mentions the need for men's engagement and calls for strengthening advocacy to men as an important action. I believe that the topic that is to be dealt with at this conference is indeed very timely. I conclude my remark by sincerely hoping that today's meeting will be successful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for these very interesting opening remarks and to share with us your internal and international efforts to advance women, peace and security. Great to hear that we have a champion around the table advancing this agenda for the future. I'm going to now hand over to Ms. Yoko Tagazawa, who's program officer in the Peacebuilding program at the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, who traveled all the way to be with us today. Thank you so much, and for sharing some initial findings on the research. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Ambassador Yasushi Yamamoto, Deputy Chief of Mission of Japan to the European Union, Honorable Mr. Guilherme Sampo, Head of the Peace, Security and Defense Partnership Division, the European Union, Honorable Ambassador Thomas Ossowski, Representative to the Political and Security Committee, Permanent Representation of the Federal Republic of Germany to the European Union, Honorable Mr. Muhammad Takdeo, Deputy Chief of Mission of the Republic of Indonesia to the European Union, Excellencies, distinguished guests and delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor for me to speak to welcome you at this launch of our new report, Reconstructing Masculinities, Gender Dynamics After Conflict in Aceh, Maluku, and Bangsamoro Mindanao. First, representing the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, I would like to express our deepest gratitude to our partner, Conservation Resources, for all their support to realize this event. We feel extremely fortunate that we could build a partnership with them, a highly respected institution which has been promoting peace for many years. Also, we would like to thank our panelists, most experienced and suited for today's event. The Sasakawa Peace Foundation is a private foundation from Japan promoting international cooperation. We started our work of peace building, particularly in southern Thailand in 2010, and have tried our best to support women's inclusion in every activity. However, we have been meeting consistent resistance from male local stakeholders. That experience led us to the question, how international intervention could facilitate gender transformation from within societies, avoiding unnecessary backlash from local power holders, which encouraged us to inaugurate this 3-year-long collaborative research journey. In this research project, we have been collaborating with Conciliation Resources, Integral Knowledge Asia, and 5 other international and local partners. This research is important because despite 24 years of global efforts to further the women, peace, and security agenda, we have seen that our efforts continue to be undermined. Decision-making systems are still dominated by men and elites who encourage violence, exclude or marginalize women, and fund conflict. This research is critical of dominant WPS approaches that have often been narrowly focused on women's representation in formal settings, and which can place the responsibility of achieving gender equality on women. This approach can ignore men and masculinities, and local political, cultural, and religious practices, including within the family or communities, where our research reveals discriminatory gender norms are primarily reproduced. I'd like to take this opportunity to briefly explain what we have done in this project. First, we drafted a questionnaire with more than 70 questions on gender equality, peace building, experiences of violence, and perceptions on gender norms. The questionnaire was revisited to suit local contexts by our local partners, namely International Center for Aceh and Indian Ocean Studies in Aceh, Indonesia, and Patimla University in Maluku, Indonesia, and the Mindanao State University in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao in the Philippines. The answers of about 6,000 respondents were collected with the help of about 100 local enumerators. We also spoke with 359 people across all 3 contexts during focus group discussions and interviews. By analyzing this extensive data, this report provides 6 insightful findings. It also puts forward 4 entry points to shift dominant masculinities and create opportunities for women to meaningfully participate in peace processes and public decision-making. We also propose 10 concrete policy recommendations. Moreover, I am very pleased to share with you that we already launched papers compiled by our local partners, closely investigating each context. Furthermore, one paper focusing on masculinities perspectives from another partner, Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace and Security, was launched last year, and 3 more papers analyzing each local context will shortly follow. We truly hope that this report will invite further discussions on the importance of understanding the role of men and masculinities in promoting WPS work and facilitate more dialogue, connecting local and international stakeholders to explore the question of how we can advance WPS agenda and gender equality, coping with global and local backlash by harnessing local resources and inspirations. As my last remark, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all the participants for joining this discussion. We cordially look forward to learning from your feedback. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yoko, for sharing the methodology and the impressive work that was behind this research. I think people are just getting really excited about reading the findings and the recommendations now, but I'm going to hand over to Dr. Sophia Close, who's an associate at Conciliation Resources and was also deeply involved in the research, to share some of the findings with us today. Thank you so much, Sophia.
Thank you. My colleague Yoko has already given our thanks to the honourable ambassadors and senior colleagues from the EU. So I'm very also grateful for their time and expertise today. I want to acknowledge that Yoko and I are speaking on behalf of the report's authors, Maho Nakayama, the director of Sasakawa's Peacebuilding Department, Rizky Amalia Arfat, and Penny Rahmal Hani from Integral Knowledge Asia in Indonesia, who are unable to travel to be with us today. I will share the 6 main findings of the report and the implications of these findings for people who are supporting peace mediation and post-conflict transitions, particularly in areas that continue to experience gendered violence and conflict. Finding 1. During conflict, being a man in Aceh, Maluku, and the Bangsamoro was closely linked with violence and physical strength. Our data shows that after conflict, masculinities have been reconstructed around being the decision maker, breadwinner, and protector of the family. After conflict, men's awareness of the harmful impacts of some expectations of being a man have grown. More than half of all men who were surveyed said that they hope that the next generation would hold different expectations of being a man. Men who are involved in household chores tend to disagree with the need to stick to traditional gender roles. Men who are also undertaking more household chores when their socioeconomic status increases, which indicates the importance of these factors to transform gender equality. But social and cultural hierarchies persist, particularly in households. It is still expected that women should be the primary caretakers and homemakers, which reinforce unequal divisions of labour between women and men. Finding 2. Our research found that men and women's behaviour is largely socialised in households and religious spaces and customary institutions in the Bangsamoro. This highlights the importance of women as mothers and spouses, fathers, and religious and clan leaders in shaping masculinities. And it also, these close intergenerational relationships also demonstrate why gender norms are so highly resistant to change. Household and community domains are often overlooked by policymakers and peace practitioners, and the efforts are usually directed towards national institutions and individual women. Finding 3. Men who have direct experiences of sexual violence during conflict are more likely to accept the use of violence to protect their communities. Witnessing physical violence during conflict also means that men are more likely to accept the use of violence against women and children. Men and women who have not experienced conflict-related trauma are more likely to reject the use of violence as appropriate. The breakdown of social systems and community networks as a result of conflict have also contributed to violence, which disproportionately affects women. For example, women in polygamous or unregistered marriages experience poorer levels of mental health. While demand for trauma healing and mental health and psychosocial support work is very strong, it has had limited attention in peace agreements and post-conflict transitions in all 3 contexts. Finding 4. Male gatekeeping, which means preventing women's economic and social and political opportunities, persists because men whose mothers, wives, daughters and sisters work outside the home may not be seen to fulfill expectations of masculinity as the family provider. Relationship status matters. Married women are significantly more likely to be prevented from working outside the home. Increases in men's socioeconomic status did not increase their support for married women working outside the home. We think that's perhaps because they can afford not to have women's contributions to the family income. But the increased socioeconomic status in women improves their support for women to take on leadership roles within the workplace. But even if women work, they are still expected to do domestic chores and maintain respect and obedience to their husbands and their fathers. Finding 5. The All Achenese Women's Congress, interfaith networks in Maluku, and peace networks across the Bangsamoro show that women have been key in building peace. Still, most people agree that men should continue to hold visible power and that women should refrain from taking public roles that are expected for men. However, we found that men who have participated in peace or gender equality training tended to approve of women's participation in peace building. Men who agreed that gendered norms had shifted as a result of conflict are also more likely to support women's participation in peace building. In practice, men are taking on more household chores and women are holding specific and new roles in customary, religious, political and private sector settings that could be further cultivated for women's inclusion. Our final finding is that a narrow focus on security, political stability and infrastructure development has exacerbated the root causes of conflict in each region. It's compounded poverty and disillusionment towards government, and it's ignored past traumas and historical grievances and further excluded women. Levels of unemployment, mental health problems and substance abuse are high. Men who are unable to achieve masculine ideals are much more likely to act violently. So what are the implications of our research? Our findings are highlighting the urgent need for a radical transformation of the WPS agenda, embracing local perspectives of gender equality. We suggest 4 key entry points to shift dominant masculinities and support women's meaningful participation in peace processes and public decision-making. First, in the global north, private spaces in households are seen as individual domains, but in Indonesia and the Philippines, home or the private domain is a hub of crucial social, economic and cultural activities and the root of kinship relationships. Our research found that women's activities in these spaces often gives them power to negotiate with men and take on new decision-making roles. This means that WPS goals of increases of women's leadership and decision-making are connected with their everyday experiences of private or household spaces. So achieving these goals means working not just with national level institutions and individual women, but in households, families, clan and community spaces on attitude and behavioural change with parents, husbands and clan and religious leaders. Second, it is important to make sure that context-specific and gender-responsive trauma healing and mental health and psychosocial support services are available, particularly in areas that experience high levels of conflict-related trauma. We advocate for a widespread use of a trauma-informed approach to mediation and peacemaking. This means including transitional justice and mental health and psychosocial support provisions in peace agreements and providing funding for these during the transition process. These actions can mitigate the risk of ongoing conflict-related trauma and exacerbating violence. Male allies who publicly endorse women's leadership can catalyse support for women in both public and private spaces. Widely available, tailored training programs focused on peace building, gender equality and transitional justice, incorporating a strong masculinities lens and working and engaging with men are essential. These programs can help men and boys identify the benefits of gender-responsive peace for themselves, not just for women. And finally, women's activism requires sustained support, providing long-term, core, flexible and easy to access financial and political resources to women's community-level activities and organisations can support them to influence post-conflict political transitions. Thank you for listening attentively while I share our research findings and their implications. We welcome your questions and your reflections and hearing how these might be relevant to your work.
Thank you very much, Sophia. I find the research really, really interesting, and we're very lucky to have Mr. Guillaume Riutor-Sampol, who's head of the Peace, Security and Defense Partnerships at the European External Action Service, who's joining us on behalf of Mr. Cosmin Dobran, who had to go on mission last minute today, and who's going to share a little bit of his perspective. And in fact, dare I say that you've already implemented one of the findings, because I think I heard that you may have taken a training actually on gender equality, and you're fully prepared to speak to us of your experience and of course of the efforts that the EU has done through its gender action plan and women, peace and security strategy. The floor is yours, Guillaume. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much, Olivia. You just revealed the final punch, which was about this training and what I was bringing to my personal engagement. But it's good because it comes forth. Here, I'm thankful to. I want to thank Constellation Research and Sasakawa Foundation for organizing this very important discussion, and panel that is not only passing on the message to this fantastic audience, but also online, which I'm certain will have an important reverberation. Look, I saw the 3 very long questions that were asked for. And I will try to reply them in a structured manner, but please bear with me if I don't get it right, because this is part of a problem. You need to acknowledge and endeavor a process for transformation. So this is what I will try to do, to explain what we are trying to do in the European Union to tackle a problem we identified. Conflict does not affect women or men homogeneously, because these are not homogeneous groups. Not all men speak for all men, not all women speak for all women. Intersectionality is essential to understand that the way both groups access to resources and to power changes substantively the impact of conflict in this subgrouping. So having this logic taking into account not only gender but also the different layers of identity, it is absolutely essential to have an impact in the work we do in peace building and peace mediation. The important, let's say, driving force when I try to explain this to hierarchy in the house is that it's not just the right moral thing to do, it's in a practical term also the right thing to do. We all in this room know the 35% more sustainability of peace agreements in which that last more than 5 years brokered by women. And also, of course, we have a human rights-based approach that is driving our decision-making. It's treaty-based, constitutionally based, and morally based. So we do have only good reasons to go ahead and try to tackle this issue. It is said in the way it's framed in the presentation that, or in the let's say concept note, that there's a backlash in the EU. I want to think that it's in EU member states, and because the European Union institutions do not concede an inch in the need to ensure that women, peace and security agenda is framing the way we think. Actually, I think we are moving on from a, let's say, horizontal tokenism of 25 years ago, in which you had to address gender in a paper in an artificial manner. And I think we are moving away from women talking about women, and we are moving towards women talking about how to resolve conflict and how to have a central role in the way we shape peace in the European Union. And I think that there are a number of examples of how in the European Union we're trying to do that. I will focus on the remit of my work, which is conflict prevention and mediation, as far as it's concerned. But I will also mention something about our partnerships, and I'm very happy to see here the Japanese deputy head of mission who is a partner in this endeavor. This strategic compass refers to the need for the EU to develop a gender-responsive conflict analysis. We just finished our methodology. We are factoring in a systematic manner the different experiences, needs, roles, and interests of men and women, boys and girls, and all these different backgrounds, precisely because of this intersectionality, have to be taken into account when shaping our initiatives. What we are trying to do with this conflict analysis, it's not only identify the problems or the drivers of conflict and the different actors involved, but also options for action for EU. So on the basis of the EU instruments, in order to tackle this very much gendered power sharing logics. And we are trying to engage men and boys in order to have these logics or an education on peace and on power sharing, and of course working on masculinities and endeavoring this transformation, because again, it's a generational issue. It's not overnight. I mean, myself when I discover myself making mistakes, and I try to improve them. And it's something that we all as a collective endeavor we are carrying here. It's a whole of society approach, and I think the whole allyship issue is about this. It's not about letting only making the space for women. It's about accompanying the empowerment of women. We also, of course, do have targeted approaches to women and men when talking about mental health matters. Of course, conflict analysis is screening, which is not the same thing that the gender responsive conflict analysis tool we're developing, are very much tailored to address post-conflict situations. And what we are doing, because these conflict analyses are written by experts, is in our terms of reference, when we do carry out assignments, when we give money to experts, because very often the problem comes down to money, we devote it to women experts or experts that have a gender training, a gender empowerment, gender equality, women empowerment background. We also work with partners. Olivia, you cut me if I'm too long, because I've
2 minutes.
Okay, I'm yeah. I've covered the first third of the presentation. You can just tell me shut up, and I do. We do work with the capacity in order to build the capacities of all the stakeholders, precisely because it's not only about the European Union doing the right thing or feeling in between ourselves around Rome and Truman that we do nice speeches. It's about making sure that mediators themselves do have a logic of addressing the needs of women in order to have a sustainable peace, and this is why we developed our peace mediation guidelines and updated them with a specific chapter on women, peace, and security. But not only a chapter on women, peace, and security, but an across the document logics of gender logics that allow us to put it across the EU engagements. When we have now in our tool, financial tool called Hermes for mediation support, we do have an expert on gender that is devoted precisely to improve the way we finance activities with this very logics, with a more gender sensitive spirit. We are working on the next Community of Practice 2024. I hope you will come. We had yesterday the first steering committee, and I'm very happy to say that we have in the group leading this project, which is quite a exceptional one because it's not a top-down; it's a civil society-driven or private organizations in the field of mediation-driven. We have a specific expert on gender that is making sure that we make our panels and our event gender sensitive. And this doesn't mean, again, tokenism. It's about having a checklist and only accepting panels that meet certain standards and the criteria. It's a practical way of addressing this matter. How do we do our operations in field of mediation? Of course, we have, and thank you to Conciliation Resources and also CMI now have carried out a good mapping and a study on women mediation networks, but also about how to engage women mediators in this process, again, because it's the right thing to do, but it's the most impactful thing to do. I have just run out of time, and I'm only 1/3 ahead. So
1 minute.
1 minute. We so the mental health and psychosocial support angle. It was a complex presentation. There was a lot to cover. Of course, we hope we'll also cover this in our peace mediation guidelines. There's a specific chapter on these matters. I think it was sufficiently covered, but we can always improve in last year's Community of Practice, and we do address it very actively in two sectoral areas of mediation engagement. One is insider mediation, in which we are systematically building the MHPSS support of male and female insider mediators, for instance, in Niger. And we do look into the cross-reference and cross-fertilization between mediation and transitional justice, which is essential in order to address grievances, to address injustices, impunity, missing of truth. How do men are involved in this? And I already said it at the beginning. It's an intergenerational issue. It's not overnight. It's something that we need to improve. It's also that involves women and mothers as well in the endeavor. And it's a transformative action that involves whole of the society. It affects any field. It's good that we have a conversation about peace building today, but it's not limited to peace building. On the contrary, it's every angle of our work. Spotlight Initiative is a good example of how we are trying to tackle the elimination of violence against women. We did it in Timor-Leste, and I'm here thinking about your neighbor in Liberia, and it was mentioned. I'm very happy that Sophia made a reference also to the involvement of traditional leaders. We do see this finding true. So I'm happy to see that it's not only one of the things that we tackled of your report. And finally, as you said at the beginning, training is essential. Realizing how far we are from gender equality is the first step. It's an important one, but it's just one step up. Let's engage in this sort of conversation like we are doing today in order to make sure that we get to the equality in our societies that we all need. Thank you.
Thank you, Guillaume. You've managed to say a lot in very little time. It's impressive, but really appreciate that you share with us, your personal actually commitment to this, and in training and learning and being transformative, and the European External Action Service. We all obviously have a long way to go, but I think certainly generating these kind of conversations and taking full responsibility, each of us will sort of enable us all to make a step forward. I'm going to hand over to Ambassador Thomas Sowski, who's representative to the Political and Security Committee at the Permanent Representation of Germany to the EU. Germany has a feminist foreign policy. We're very proud and happy to have gone through it. I know you have a lot of experience in very difficult, different contexts also. So the floor is yours. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. And as the eminent speakers before me have already insisted a lot of, theoretical aspects, I will focus a little bit more on practice, starting with the audience here. I see in front of me mainly women. This is a topic today which should have at least as many men in the room as women. So it is a little bit of, we need to mobilize a more male audience. And can I underline in this context that the PSC, the Political and Security Committee where I work, and I just came out of a meeting, is totally gender balanced today. We have, when you include the chair, we have 14 male ambassadors and 14 female ambassadors. And we are the council body of the European Union who deal with peace and security. And I must say, this gender balance, which is so totally normal already for us in our daily work, we meet 2 or 3 times a week, full day meetings. I see my colleagues more than I see my family. This is already so much now into us, and we also travel together. We went to Africa 2 weeks ago, 2 days South Africa, 2 days Mozambique, 1 day Ethiopia. So we are such a good team from 27 member states plus the chair. So this question of gender equality doesn't even play a role anymore because we have a full gender equality. And I would guess this summer when we have a rotational event, every summer a few ambassadors will be exchanged, probably we even have a stronger weight of women in this council body, which is so important for the gender political role, for the geopolitical role of the European Union. Now, you pointed it out, Germany is in our coalition agreement, we have feminist foreign policy. This is not an ideological statement. It is very much a statement that we have seen in the past that policies have failed because we have male-dominated conflict situations. And on all my foreign policy postings, I was 3 years in Israel, 3 years in Rwanda, 2 years in Afghanistan, 2.5 years in the Philippines. In all postings I had, I witnessed conflict situations and I saw how positive the role of women can be. And I would like to insist here during my few minutes I have here on 2 aspects, that of course the man needs to be an agent of change, but also the woman needs to be an agent of change. For the man, For me, the most prominent example, and Katharina has heard it already many times, is when I spent 3 years in Rwanda shortly after the genocide, and I saw how the new government of national unity, which was of course also kind of a political dominated group by President Kagame and his followers. And there are many things also these people have done wrongly, or not done correctly, but one thing they did very well in the aftermath of the genocide, they empowered women in the Rwandan society. Why? Because they realized that this ideological hatred, ethnic-based hatred, these doctrines about Tutsi and Hutus and who cannot live together, that was a male-dominated doctrine. And to bring women into politics and into higher responsibility positions in society was a way and means to stabilize the Rwandan society. So Kagame was a strong promoter of bringing women into mayor positions, into ministerial positions, not only at the minister level, but at all levels of ministerial. And for a country like Rwanda, that was a strong innovation. And in parliament today, Rwanda still underlines that they have the strongest quota of women in, or not a quota, strongest participation of women in as parliamentarians. 70% of all Rwandan parliamentarians are women. So, and I must say, I witnessed it myself, the women, they were a stabilizing factor because they were so fed up with their husbands, their children, their relatives being killed by this male-dominated ideology of supremacy of one ethnic group over the other. That they stopped with it, they wanted to finish with it, and so they really helped. And Rwanda is today a very stable society, one has to admit. Another positive example is the Philippines, where especially is someone from the Philippines here, from the Philippine embassy? No?
I posted it on the video.
Okay.
Yes,
I was the German ambassador to the Philippines.
I know.
Yeah. And here we could say with the Bangsamoro peace process, at least from the government side, it was driven by women, Teresita Deles, whom we received only this week for a lunch with a few PEC ambassadors here in Brussels, and Miriam Coronel Ferrer. They were two strong Philippine politicians, women, who pushed this peace process forward. And now with the new president, they have a stronger possibility again, especially Teresita Deles, to reinvigorate this peace process. Of course, on the Muslim side, in the Bangsamoro, on Mindanao, you don't have traditionally, and this is an issue with all Islamic societies, where the role of women still needs to be developed also in political positions and positions of responsibility. But at least on the government side, they played a very important role. Negative examples are abundant. Why could the Taliban take over Afghanistan again? Where were all the men, which we also tried to sensitize for a better, a more equal society? Very disappointing for us. I spent 2 years there. We promoted women projects. I financed, well, the German government financed a radio station for women in Kunduz. We established specific business models for women entrepreneurs. We built women's schools, girls' schools, and promoted women as teachers. But where are all these Afghan men whom we brought along in this process? Why didn't they stand up against the Taliban? Why did they allow the Taliban to come back in force as they did? Not only taking over the political power, but reducing, marginalizing women again in the Afghan society. That is a very disappointing example. But I must say, perhaps we still put a seed in the Afghan society, and perhaps these women will come back. I like to tell a very personal story. Once I opened at least 12 or 13 schools during my tenure in Kunduz. And once I came to cut another ribbon, and there were 3 little girls standing at the entrance of the school with 3 brooms in their hand. And I asked them, they were perhaps 10 years old, what are you going with this to do with these brooms? And one of the little girls told me, well, you're giving us the school today, we want to keep it clean. And there you could see how much these little girls, even though they were only 10 years old, understood how important it is that they take ownership of this process, to have schools for them now, to play a different role in Afghan society. And my personal hope is that these little girls, I mean, this is more than 10 years ago now, 12 years, 15 years, that today they are grown-up women, but perhaps we planted a seed also here for this Afghan woman to come back in force sooner or later to end with this male-dominated ideology of the Taliban. But there are more recent examples. For example, when we were in South Africa, the PSC, and we discussed with the South African government about the Ethiopian peace process, the Pretoria Agreement, they told me, when they received the Ethiopian government and the delegation from Tigray in Pretoria, they were only men. There was not a single woman. And they told them, hey, we need delegations on both sides, at least with a few women. And they really had problems, the Ethiopians, to bring up women politicians in these peace delegations. So they started a parallel process kind of with some, you know, NGOs and so on, but that was not the same thing. And the South Africans asked them, if you want this peace process to be sustainable for all the reasons which have been explained by the previous speakers, you have to bring women in to make it more stable and more sustainable. Now, that's why I believe, indeed, you need men as agents of change, because in these difficult conflict situations, like Rwanda, you needed a Kagame to do it. Like in the Philippines, you also needed a President Aquino to do it, to empower women to play an important role in this process. And of course, in Afghanistan, to come back to a more normal society, you will need women who can take off ownership. But you also need women to be the agent of change. Why do I say that? Because also, when I look back at the examples I just mentioned, also in Rwanda, you had strong women who played a very negative role, like Agatha Habyarimana, the wife of the former president who was assassinated and that started the genocide. She was the head of the so-called Akazu, the house, which was driving this hatred and this ideology. So she was a very prominent figure. Also, if I mention the Philippines, of course, no comparison with Rwanda in that sense. But the Philippines had a women president, Magalapal Arroyo, who came in at the beginning of the 2000s. And I must admit, or I must say, I must underline, and probably Filipinos cannot object to that under her reign, corruption was abundant in the Philippines. And so even though she came in as a female president, as a woman president, she didn't use this change, also in Philippine politics, to promote some change of behavior in the Philippine administration and ministerial situation where corruption was unfortunately endemic. At the opposition, or at the difference of her predecessor, the mother of President Aquino, Corazon Aquino, who came after the Marcos time and who started, of course, the rejuvenation of Philippine politics. But also when you look back at Marcos, Marcos was not alone. He had his wife, Imelda Marcos, who was also very prominent in doing politics in the Philippines, which were not kind of focused on conflict resolution, but where we had a lot of abuses of human rights, etc. So and you can go to Europe also, where we had female leaders in the past and anywhere in the world. So women in politics are not necessarily this agent of change. It is not a magic potion when you bring women into politics that they will promote the change. You need this whole of society approach where you have the men and the women working together in order to bring about this change. Otherwise, you only will have women personalities who replicate what their male predecessors have been doing before. So you need also this change of mind on the female part of a society. So that's why this whole of society approach is so important, because it will lead to a new social contract. That's what we need. A new social contract of all vivid forces of a given society that we agree in our countries, but also in our partner countries, that we need we need to use the whole potential of a given society. Of course, these are women. Of course, these are the men. But of course, these are also other groups, diverse. We live today in diverse societies where you have diversity you need to include youth, you need to include elderly people, you need to include people with different sexual orientation, you need to include handicapped people. So if we want to modernize a society, it is this whole of society approach, which is so tremendously important and which we have to work on. That's why my eminent colleague from the ES has very rightly pointed out training. Training is important to sensibilize people in schools already, at universities, in the academic curricula. But what we can do as partner governments, also in our cooperation with third countries, and that's why what we try to do within our feminist foreign policy, is also gender budgeting. That we are very vigilant with whatever we do in our engagement with third countries, that this aspect of a whole of society approach, that this is reflected in our development cooperation. It's reflected in our humanitarian help. It's reflected in our business engagement, that we are not kind of negligent in that regard, that wherever we come in to solve a certain conflict situation, this gender aspect, this whole of society approach is so tremendously important. And look at the current conflict situations which we have, like Sudan. Sudan is a war between two old generals who fight for power, money, and influence. It is the classical example of a male intoxicated old conflict, which we need to go against. And whenever we have a chance to engage in Sudan, whenever these two belligerents, brutal human rights violators come to their senses and allow the international community again to engage, we must engage with civil society above all. We must make sure that even in a country like Sudan, where women have been traditionally overwhelmed and suppressed by men in society, that they will also play a role. That we need to be vigilant that all these countries engage, in a process where Rwanda did it, where women are promoted to mayor positions, encouraged to campaign for parliament, are recruited for ministerial positions, are encouraged to start their own business, develop entrepreneurial activities. All that will be extremely important. So I could also just mention a few examples of what we do now within the context of the Bangsamoro peace process, where we specifically try to orientate our cooperation support on women projects, but I will not go deeper into that. But certainly we have to do that on a horizontal basis. We have to mainstream this effort in everything what we do, not only in cooperation with our partners, but also what we do here, what we do in Brussels. As I see that the PSC is a lighthouse for gender mainstreaming, but that does not apply to all institutions. And when you look at the German Bundestag, women represent only 30% or 27% of parliamentarians. So we are still also lacking here behind. So that is the effort which we have to do, this mainstreaming for us, for our partners. And here, like in many other fields, always applies the Nike principle, just do it. Thank you.
Thank you. I have to say, I do love that slogan. Ambassador, thank you so much for squaring things up, for bringing it home to the EU institutions and sharing examples from the world, present and past, for underlining the importance of ownership of whole of society approach, and for this idea of a new social contract. Obviously, we wouldn't be here if we didn't believe fully that this can be changed and that we can all contribute to this change. I'm soon going to be turning to the question and answer session, which I'm sure you already burning to ask questions to our speakers here today. But before turning to all of you, we're very lucky that we have with us Mr. Muhammad Takdir, who's Deputy Chief of Mission at the Mission of the Republic of Indonesia to the European Union. We thought really well suited, given the report is partly on the region that you represent, that you have a chance to share your thoughts as well. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Olivia. Ambassador Thomas, Ambassador Yamamoto, Guilhem, Mrs. Sasakawa Yoko, Dr. Shopi, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to join the discussion and present some commentary over the release of the research we are deliberating today. my current foreign minister has two legacy that she would like to leave. One of them is women and peace. So I think the Sasakawa Peace Foundation report on reconstructing masculinity, gender dynamics after conflict in Aceh and Maluku and Mindanao is a very good piece of reading. The research report itself is intellectually stunning with some provoking findings, but I'm not surprised by that since the research itself combined or put at least three critical and heavy themes or issues such as women leadership, masculine politics, and conflict. These are all together taken through one single and simple snapshot portraying women in a just relatively recent recovering area of conflict in Indonesia. In light of this, and before breaking down one of the key findings, because you have 6 findings and a very heavy stuff in there, so I let just to break down one of them. But overall, I should agree with the fact that historically, women and children have often been disproportionately affected by conflict. Moreover, their contribution to peace processes and post-conflict reconstructions have been undervalued and sidelined. The past and present conflict in many parts of the world have shown us such unfortunate propensity. Sadly, it continues to demonstrate women's vulnerability in various contexts of life. However, with regard to the finding of unequal gender norms and structural inequalities persist and prevent more widespread transformation of gender norms after conflict in both Aceh and Maluku, as presented in the report, is quite, I think, is quite historically described. Here the reason. Since the establishment of the Islamic Kingdom of Perlak, the Kingdom of Samudra Pasai to the Kingdom of Aceh Darussalam, centuries ago, Aceh's men and women have been built equally through Islamic teaching. The teaching sourced from 4 pillars of Islam, the Holy Quran, Sunnah, Ijma, and Qiyas. Those 4 resources did not place men and women in a discriminatory framework, not at all. In politics and governance, during the reign of Kingdom Aceh Darussalam in 1600s, the Acehnese was led by distinguished women such as Sultana Safiatuddin Tajul Alam, Sultana Nurul Alam Nakiyatuddin, Sultana Sakiyatuddin, and Sultana Kamalasa, the 4th Sultana of Aceh. A Singapore writer named Mr. Banu Al Khan from the National University of Singapore wrote the success of this woman in a book entitled Rule Behind the Silk Curtain, the Sultanate of Aceh 1641-1699, in which she described how Sultana Safiatuddin navigated her steward leadership in maintaining the balanced control of geopolitics in Malacca Strait and spread strong influence in the region during the colonial era. Other piece of evidence of the involvement of Acehnese women in various walks of life can also be traced from the emergence of outstanding female figures in military operations. They took active participation in the military and religious fields, such as Admiral Malahayati, resistance leader Madame Cut Nyadin, Madame Cut Mutia, and Madame Tengku Pakina. For historical reference, this woman activism in Aceh unveils the extraordinary role of women in the military hierarchy during the age of Aceh Sultanate, in a time when the position of army commander and navy admiral were predominantly occupied by men. Acehnese women emerged as alternative figures of utmost significance. Admiral Miss Malahayati, for example, and Miss Cut Nyadin were both remarkable individuals hailed from the noble lineage of the Aceh kings, with a reputation feared by both Portugal and Netherlands. We can compare this bold activism of women with other countries in the north, where most of them don't even have women in the military top list, rather than gender arc of France, as I recall from the history. Decades later, after conflict, and relatively fresh from the conclusion of the 2005 peace deal in the province, Aceh still managed to withhold its modern counter-narrative towards what this research called masculine politics by electing 12 women in Aceh People Representative Council 2014-2019. And for the recent election, I think before the recent election from 2019-2024, a little bit decreased to a woman in the council representative. But at least it shows that the woman really actively involved in politics in those two in that region. I think this again projects Acehnese women's ability to collectively engage in addressing some critical concern of their time, such as the unfair allocation of resources for peace building and reconstruction, along with the persistent issues of gender-based violence and inequalities within the communities. Along this line, I would like to share some different set of perspective with regard to Maluku's women, to Maluku's leadership. In terms of geographical background, Maluku is quite different from Aceh. Maluku and North Maluku, and I think the research focusing on the Maluku, not the North Maluku. The two provinces are defined by its unique characteristics of socio-geographic and socio-demographic as their cultural communities that rooted throughout the spread of hundreds of islands in the province. They are known categorically as land or mountain communities and coastal or marine communities. The former represent the type of paternalistic feminisms, and the latter features the type of paternalistic masculine. In the local cultural term, maternalistic feminism is recognized as what we call patalima, a female dominance, while paternalistic masculine is widely accepted as patasiwa, meaning male dominance. The problem is, and this is probably needs to be researched further by Sasakawa, I think, that the Orientalists oftentimes misunderstood the two concepts. They tend to describe patalima and patasiwa as contradictory and conflicting in nature when it comes to the implementation of each own leading rule. As a matter of fact, the two are actually growing and evolving in a positive dialectical manner. There is no distinctive demarcation line that draws the upper-lower level of status separating the man and woman. In Central Maluku, men's characters of masculinity, toughness, and etc., or woman's appeal of tenderness, peace, and coolness are more dialectical shape toward the perfection of being a man or a woman. Each one of them is complementary to each other's perfection. There is a strong and accepted distribution of roles where a boy cannot be a man yet until he is able to hold the masiri, called salawaku. And the girl may not be a woman until she's able to hold sampearu, called sampearu, a kind of tool to cook the papeda, local cuisine. The practice of patalima and patasiwa in Central Maluku is quite contrary to what we are seeing in Southeast Maluku. In Southeast Maluku is the province down the Maluku, which I think manifests some of the findings of the report with few exceptions. Southeast Maluku generally occupies many small islands in which the paternalistic masculine is noticeably rising the culture of man dominance. But such a tendency does not extremely marginalize the role of women, knowing the contribution of Southeast Maluku diaspora who have migrated to different part of the world, to different part of Indonesia, but still maintain the close connection with the island. They renew, the migrant renew the spirits and local consciousness of the importance of human rights, education, and social transformation, both in rural and urban population, in the province or in the islands. In this regard, we share similar sentiment that cultural attachment, including religion, patriarchal society, and level of education, plays a vital part in social change. As a result, men in Maluku are willing to recognize the crucial contribution of women in resolving conflicts. For instance, men in Ambon, in the Maluku, highlighted the impact of the Caring Women's Movement, which stands for the first collaborative platform of Muslim, Catholic, and Protestant women in fostering peace in Maluku. This Caring Women's Movement organized interfaith gatherings to ensure fair distribution of emergency aid and promote reconciliation among Muslim and Christian women. One thing that I appeal from the research is that despite huge challenge ahead, we should seriously consider that the conflict in Maluku and Aceh have only ended in 2002 and 2005. It was relatively fresh and I think still lingering much in our people's mind and heart who are suffering from this conflict. And for sure, 20 years is not a long period of time to reconcile, rebuild, and change the social dynamic molded by years of conflict. As a final note, I should underline and reiterate the urgent and pressing needs to recognize and further promote women's involvement in peace building. It is important to reshape our understanding of women's position in conflict. Women must not stand as mere victims, but take up the role as architects of resolution and conflict recovery. Their voices are vital in achieving sustainable and comprehensive solutions to attain a more enduring peace. The inclusive participation of women both in political and peace processes is crucial in strengthening local resilience and establishing effective development platforms in post-conflict countries. But to give an overview of such complexity of men and women's interaction in the aftermath of communal conflict require more wisdom in our understanding. In principle, Indonesia will always commit to ensuring the full, equal, effective, and meaningful participation of women in all walks of life, including at the forefront of peace processes at the leadership level. Data shows that women participation increase the probability and durability of peace agreement. Their essential ability to build trust and foster communication is crucial for promoting understanding and encouraging dialogue in set resolutions. The global community, all of us, must invest more in women by providing quality education, strengthening their abilities to address ongoing conflict, and tackling existing barriers that hamper women's access to decision-making, and providing a safe and conducive environment for women to succeed and thrive in the peace processes. It is important to note the strong correlation between gender equality and stability, where meaningful participation produces strong democratic institutions. The higher the inequality, the higher the use of violence and domestic conflict. As a takeaway, and please reassure, Indonesia remains committed and open to collaboration in promoting women's equal, full, and meaningful participation in peace processes, including especially through education and capacity building programs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great to know that we have all these champions around the table. We'll be reaching out to you in the next few months and years to make sure that we're all advancing this agenda. But thank you for bringing it home, Muhammad, for really sharing with us some of the cultural aspects here that I found so fascinating and important to understand, and to share with us your commitment to quality education and meaningful participation. I'm gonna open up now to all of you to take your questions for the speakers today. We have 45 minutes ahead of us, and then at 12 we will have to finish. So the floor is yours. I'm looking forward to this question and answer, which will not be recorded.